Hey everybody, Leah Klett here with the Christian Post, and I'm so honored today to be joined by Benjamin Watson. He is a former NFL player, VP of Strategic Relationships for the national pro-life organization Human Coalition, and he's also the author of The New Fight for Life: Roe, Race, and a Pro-Life Commitment to Justice. Thank you for taking time to speak with me. I know you are incredibly busy. I feel like you are everywhere doing everything, so I really appreciate this.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Thanks for all you do and for focusing on these types of issues.
Of course. Well, you are really on the front lines of this abortion issue. You work with a human coalition. So take me back to what really started your passion for combating this horrible issue.
Well, it's funny, we were talking about our upbringing, and I grew up in a household that cared about life. I saw my parents really care about people. I always understood that God made people in His own image, and that we had inherent value and dignity, no matter of our ethnic background or our economic status or our stage of development. That was something that was talked about at home, not necessarily from a political pro-life lens, but just from a whole life, just upholding the dignity of all life together. We understood that. And so that kind of translated as a believer. I truly believe that people have dignity and that God cares, and that as believers, it's our job to take care of primarily the most vulnerable people. We see that throughout Scripture. So for me, the on-ramp was really one of seeking justice for people, whether it be marginalized people groups, whether it be the vulnerable in the womb, whether it be mothers who are struggling, or those who experience some sort of discrimination, racism, those sorts of things. I kind of lump all those things together into my kind of justice advocate platform, and that's my on-ramp. That's why I think this is important, not only for the child in the womb, but also for mothers as well. And so I think, practically speaking, when I was playing football, I've been out for 5 years now. I've been retired. But while I was playing, my wife and I purchased some ultrasound units for some local pregnancy resource centers where we lived. So Baltimore, Maryland, I played there. New Orleans, Louisiana, a few other places, even here in Georgia, we did. And that kind of the word about that kind of got out, I think. And so then all of a sudden, had an opportunity to speak at the March for Life a couple times, and kind of brought me into, I guess, this part of what we call the pro-life movement. And then, as you mentioned, my work with Human Coalition. I was on their board of advisors for a long time, but when I retired, I specifically wanted to kind of understand this issue in a little bit more depth. And Jeff Bradford, the president there, was, so welcoming of me and allowed me to come on board and on staff. And it's really been a great experience, just advocating, connecting with supporters, and just understanding this issue from that lens as well.
Mhm. Well, I've been seeing you sort of in the news a lot lately. You've been writing op-eds where you're talking about the importance of men combating this issue and standing up. What are some specific actions that men can take to advocate for life effectively?
Well, the first part about manhood, Leah, is really understanding the role of men, I think. And this is nothing new. A lot of times we like to kind of craft our discussion about men thinking that, okay, suddenly men have lost their whatever it is. I'm more of the viewpoint that since the very beginning, manhood has always been under attack. And the reason why is because it's a God established, God ordained role for men as protectors, providers, priests, and prophets in their household. And so, in order to create disorder, you attack families. This is nothing new to the United States. Has been going on for a very long time. And so, the first part of a man being involved is really understanding his role,
Mhm.
understanding the importance of his leadership, of his physical, emotional, spiritual care for children and women, love for them, sacrifice for them, and understanding that he has what it takes. A lot of men really don't understand, or really don't grasp that they don't feel like they have what it takes, perhaps because they've made mistakes in the past, perhaps because maybe they didn't have a great role model as a father, and so they doubt that they can do the things that they know are necessary. And so the first part is affirming them that not only is your role necessary, but you are equipped for that role, and others will come alongside you and help you and challenge you and mentor you, and support you in that role, and to be courageous in leading. That's the first part. And then as it pertains specifically to their role, when it comes to abortion and preborn children, it's, man, stepping into your role as a father, as a caretaker. One thing I've always loved the conversations with other guys, especially when I was playing football in the locker room. There'll be a lot of guys who, perhaps having their first child, and they wanted to be the great dad that they didn't have before, they didn't have, and they were a little bit worried about that. And I will always tell them that fatherhood starts before baby even gets in your arms. Fatherhood starts in the relationship you have with the mother. Hopefully, she is your wife, even if she's not, and she becomes your wife later. The relationship you have with her, how you treat her, is going to create the safe place to bring that child into the world. And so, number one, men have to live out that role. Number two, men have to use their voice. Um, the narrative out there is this is not a men's issue. Biologically, it is a men's issue. By chromosomes, men have a role in this. You can't have a child without one. So you do have a role in it. And not only that, if you don't use your voice to protect women and children, um, there are other men and other people who will step in and do that to the other side, will look to snuff out that life. So men have to understand who they are, have to have courage to speak out, and also realize that when men speak out, when men do these sorts of things, other people see that. And it's amazing how when one person stands up and lights a fire, others see that and believe that they can do it as well.
I think that's a really good point that culture does sort of try to silence men right now on this issue. We're seeing that a lot where they're saying, this is a woman's body. Men do not have a say in what happens to a woman's body. This is a woman's issue. What encouragement do you want to give to men who want to stand up and say something, but they feel overwhelmed by really the cultural and political climate that we're in right now?
Conviction, do so because it's your conviction. Do so with an on-ramp of compassion. One of the best ways to understand how to get involved in an issue is to understand the needs. When you think about the typical abortion-determined woman, this is just statistics, not pro-life or pro-choice, just who they are. Usually they already have a child, usually in their late 20s or so, usually have at least high school education, perhaps some college. They usually are either part-time job or underemployed, but economics and finances usually have a role, although very wealthy women get abortions too. I'm just saying the typical. And so understanding that even at Human Coalition, we talk about the 76%. And what that means is that 76% of the abortion determined women that we engage with at Human Coalition say they would prefer to parent their child if their circumstances were different.
Hmm.
So the compassionate approach to that is, what are those circumstances? Well, it's always relationships, number one, with the father is always important. But also there are things like education, finances, childcare, healthcare, all these sorts of things. So the compassionate approach, if you have the conviction that, abortion is not a public good, that it is an evil, and you have the conviction that you want to protect vulnerable children and women, then understanding what they need is vitally important as well, so that you can speak truth to power in that essence. And you can say, look, these are the things that these women say that they need so that they can parent their child. How do I advocate for those? How do I challenge other men to do those sorts of things? How do I look at the broader political spectrum and say, what are, some policies coming down the line that will help families, that will support families? That's how you engage. And then it's about courage, being courageous, understanding that everybody's not going to agree with you, understanding that there may be a cost for speaking out about this, but is life worth the cost? Is saving lives, people that are bear the image of our Creator, the men, the women, the children, is saving lives worth the cost of perhaps someone saying something bad about you, or perhaps you getting pushed back at your work? You mentioned the fact that men are are told to kind of stay out of this. That's interesting because they're only told to stay out when they have the view that life should be protected and supported.
Mhm.
They're not told to stay out when they have the view that abortion should be on demand for whatever reason at any stage of development. And so it's not that we don't want men involved, we just don't want certain men involved. And again, it's understanding your role, understanding your ordained role, and that you have what it takes to do this, and that we need men. Abortion and so many other social ills um, will not end um, or not be curtailed until men make it so. And that's not to say that women don't have incredible power. You do, uh, but it goes the way that men allow it to go. And the reason why we're at this point when it comes to abortion is because men have allowed it to be so.
So, Ben, how can the pro-life movement effectively engage and mobilize younger generations to support and advocate for life? Because I mean, I feel like this is gets tricky with younger people.
It does, and I'm not a sociologist, but I do know that large reforms or movements always have to uh, bring in youth. It has to be youth movement. Whatever it is, there has to be a vision for engaging youth. Just because the way the life cycle goes, you need young people. When you think about 20 years from now, what are the policy? What's going to be the climate or the atmosphere about this issue? What's going to be the collective conversation around this issue in 20 years? A lot of that's going to be predicated upon what our young people today think. And so the primary way we engage young people is not on social media, although that's very important. And we need social media influencers that promote these types of messages. That's vitally important. It's not in the school system, although school system is very important. We need to have, health classes that teach human dignity initiative and human dignity curriculum. There's some great curriculum out there that teaches not from a religious standpoint, but just from a human dignity standpoint when it comes to how do we value human life as we look throughout history and atrocities that have happened through history. How do we value human life? So that's important from an educational standpoint. The church is vitally important for those who are people of faith or religious and attend different bodies of faith. How do pastors, priests speak about this issue from the pulpit? I saw a study some time ago during 2020. They reviewed thousands of online sermons, and only a small percentage of them even talked about the issue of life and the issue of abortion from the pulpit. Understandably, because it is such a political issue now that it can divide your congregation. But there are ways for clergy to engage in this topic in a way that is truthful, non-condemning. When we understand that 40% of women, and I would say 40% of men who say they attend church regularly have an abortion story. And
Wow.
so this is something that is happening inside, people of faith, bodies of faith, not just on the outside. And so it's important that we engage young people from that perspective that are coming to our houses of worship. The primary way that we engage young people is in our homes. You're a mother. You understand that you are, the hero, the shero of your children right now. Their father is the hero. We have 7 children. How we speak about life, how we speak about our adversaries, how we speak about people who disappoint us or people that we don't agree with is all part of that. How they see us serve other people.
Mhm.
Um, the things they see us advocate for. All that blends into that conversation. And then directly when it comes to life, look, we prioritize so much about what we teach our children. Many of us send our kids to camps to learn how to play basketball or to learn how to do coding. We do all these sorts of things for our children. It's also important that we teach them a whole life ethic,
Mm.
um, a womb to tomb ethic that teaches them about, the importance of human beings and protecting them and serving those sorts of things. So the primary place that we engage young people is where we run into young people the most, and that is within our homes.
So, Ben, looking ahead, what is your vision for the pro-life movement and what milestones do you want to see really achieved over the next decade?
Oh, that's a great question. I should think about the next decade more instead of just today. Um, I think primarily, I want to see the pro-life movement really, and it's hard right now because we are in the, I mean, we're in the middle of a political season, of course. We're always in some sort of political season, but right now it's really ramped up. And so we're viewing so much through the lens of politics. In the next 10 years, I, I I would love to see a place where the pro-life movement really engages and wraps its arms around the idea of both advocacy and service. I wrote about this in my book, The New Fight for Life. Legislation is important on this issue because legislation sets the tone for what's acceptable in any culture. So it's important what laws say, what laws allow. Laws will never change the human heart, though, although they are important. It was Dr. King who famously said that, I know that the law can't change the human heart, but a law can keep a man from lynching me. And I think that's important. And so the law is very important, even though it doesn't engage the heart. So over the next 10 years, we have to really be focused on engaging and changing people's hearts. And their viewpoint on life. Now, how do we do that? I think it all goes back to meeting people's needs, calling people up and meeting their needs. In the book, I talk about things that might not necessarily be pro-life laws like paid leave, things that encourage motherhood, things that encourage childbearing, child tax credits, all those sorts of things. Um, there's a list of them that I think promote healthy families and promote childhood and promote parents. But most importantly, it's about addressing inequities. Going back to that typical abortion determined woman, we can't get away from the fact that the disproportionate amount of those are from Black or minority neighborhoods, or minority communities. What are the specific needs in those communities? What have been the past injustices that have created vulnerability for those communities? The pro-life movement needs to be keenly aware of, specifically when it comes to communities of, descendants of American slavery, Black communities, of the laws, the practices that have created a vulnerable people group to where we see abortion numbers so extraordinarily high. What are those things? And are we willing as a pro-life community to say, look, that's a spot where we have to do something, or we at least have to give voice to the needs of that group because they've been so long denied. If we want to turn off the numbers of abortion and bring them down, because look, Roe v. Wade's been overturned for 2 years now. And as you know, Leah, the number of abortions have gone up with chemical abortions, the abortion pill. Doesn't matter if you live in a state that has a ban, you can still get abortion pills in whatever state you live in. And so there's still this felt need and there's still a supply. And so to turn that off, we have to address why people are vulnerable. Why are they continuing to fall into the river? And not just pull them out, but go upstream and figure out why they're falling in the first place.